Hello friends, welcome back. So this is the session number 7, and till now in the first session we discussed the meaning of inflation. In the second session we discussed the causes of inflation. Then we discussed the types of inflation. Then we discussed the impacts of inflation. Then we discussed the control of inflation. And in the sixth lecture we discussed how to measure the inflation, and in that we discussed the price index and the percentage rate of inflation. Right? So now in this session we will discuss CPI, WPI and PPI, consumer price index, wholesale price index and producer price index. Then in the next session we will discuss these associated terms, and finally we will discuss some of the previous year questions. So wholesale price index, W here stands for the wholesale. Now what is the meaning of wholesale? So it is having two words, whole and sale. So when the sale is done at the macro level, that is, it is done from the producer to the wholesaler, or from the wholesaler to the subsequent wholesaler. So this is the first stage of transaction. This stage of transaction is called wholesale. So when we track the change in the price at this level, then this is called wholesale price index. Similarly, consumer price index. Consumer, that is the person who is buying the goods, who is ultimately consuming the goods. So this consumer, the price that consumer is paying, we are tracking the change in that price, that is called consumer price index. So overall in India we have different indexes. First is wholesale price index, which is operating at the wholesale level. Then we have consumer price index, which operates at the consumer level. This consumer price index is further divided into two categories, the old ones and the new ones. The old ones, which include 4 different indices, and new ones, which include 3 different indices. We will see each one of them. So old ones, these are the old ones. So old ones include the CPI for the industrial worker, for the urban non-manual employees, for the agricultural laborers, and for the rural laborers. So one thing we can see common here is that this all indices are targeting certain section of working people. I'm repeating, it is targeting certain section of working population, the people who are working. It is targeting those people. So these industrial worker, urban non-manual employees, agricultural laborers and rural laborers, these are tracked by the old indices. But these old indices are insufficient because they are not tracking the non-working population. So the non-working population should also be considered. So for that purpose, these new indices were introduced, and these new indices include the rural CPI, the urban CPI and the combined CPI. So this combined CPI includes both rural and the urban CPI. Now we will discuss each one of them. First of all, there is one more concept, that till 2009 we used to consider this WPI as a major source of calculation. That is, in the newspaper this WPI will appear. So this was called headline inflation. After 2009, the CPI new indices, the CPI combined, is also coming in the newspaper, and this is also tracked. So headline inflation now includes both WPI and CPI. So in the newspapers you will find both WPI and CPI. We are calculating the total inflation based upon at the wholesale level and the consumer level, right? Rest of the indices, that is these indices, they are not appearing in the newspaper, but only price index is notified by the appropriate authority. So the calculation of inflation is not done based upon these indices, but these indices, these old indices I am talking about, they are used for some other purpose, for the purpose of wages calculation, for some DNS allowance calculation, but they are not used for calculation of general inflation, right? So among the above indices until 2009, only WPI were used to calculate the inflation, and it was made public through the newspaper. That is why this was also called as the headline inflation. Now the inflation is also calculated based upon new CPI indices. So these two are called headline inflation. So if there is a question, what is the what does headline inflation include? You can say it includes both CPI and WPI, CPI new indices. The other index numbers are published as index numbers and not as inflation. So the CPI old indices, they are not used for calculation of inflation, but they are published as an index number only. This thing you have to keep in mind. Now coming to the basis of weight, on what basis the weights are given. So we took the example of salt and wheat atta in the previous lecture. So we saw that the weightage of salt is less because the amount of quantity that we use is very less. The weightage of atta is very high because the amount of quantity that we use atta is very, very high, right? So accordingly, different bases are used to calculate the significance. So when we are calculating the WPI, that is the wholesale price index at the wholesale level. So this wholesale level is starting from where? It is starting from the industry. So in the industry, what happens? In the industry, production takes place. So here we will take the value of production of the respective commodity, right? So depending upon the weightage or significance in the production, we will consider this WPI weightage, right? So weightage in case of WPI will be based upon the value of production of the respective commodity for the WPI. However, for the other indices, that is for the CPI is for whom? The CPI is for the consumers. So consumers, their weightage will be taken based upon their expenditure, how much they are expending on certain item. So the items on which they are expending more, those items will be given more significance, more weightage. Why? Because they are mostly used. So they will be representing the entire basket of goods, right? So for other indices, the weights are assigned on the basis of consumer expenditure survey. This consumer expenditure survey is used to assign the weight for the consumer price index. Now coming to the wholesale price index. So this wholesale price index, again, this is a price index. What is the meaning of price index? We have already seen. It is a specialized average which is used to track the change in prices over the base year. Wholesale, this is at the wholesale level. So this is at the wholesale level, that is, it is something related to the industry, trade and commerce. So who can be the appropriate authority to issue this wholesale price index figures? Do you know? So the appropriate authority is Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the Office of Economic Advisor. Right? So please remember, it is not CSO, it is not NSSO, but it is the Office of Economic Advisor, which is working under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So this index measures the change of price of the commodity supply at the wholesale market. It is based upon the value of production adjusted for net import. So we have already seen the weightage are given based upon the value of production. Indirect taxes are excluded from the price. Indirect taxes, for example, GST. And why they are excluded? They are excluded so that the impact of change in the taxes, that is not impacting the calculation of inflation. Wholesale price index. So there are different commodities. So which price we will take? For the manufacturing products, we will take the price X factory. Now what is the meaning of X factory? So what is the meaning of X? What comes to your mind when you listen the word X? X means the last one. So X factory means the price at the gate or outside the factory. So if when the goods are standing out on the gate of the factory, the place where they were recently, that place was X and that place was factory. That is why this is called X factory price. So this X factory price basically means the price is on the gate of factory. And what does that mean? Why we are saying so? Because factory के gate पर जो price होगा, that will not include transportation charges. That will not include transportation charges. That will not include insurance charges. So transportation charge and insurance charge will not be included in X factory price. So the change in the price because of the transportation cost and the insurance cost will not be distorting the WPI calculation. So the purpose is to keep this WPI calculation as pure, as simple as possible, not to distract it from the taxes, insurance cost, transportation cost and other expenses, right? So this factor will be, this X factory price will be taken. Similarly, in case of minerals, X mines, that is on the gate of mines, when the goods are lying at the gate of mines. For the agricultural products, the price is in the mandi price, that is in the APMC, they will be taken care, right? X factory and X mines price means exclusive of transport and other charges like the insurance. Authority, who is the authority? I already told you, authority is Office of Economic Advisor, which works under the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. So this department is, so in the examination they can ask this department name also. So the name of department is Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, right? In WPI, the weightage of different items is like this. So if we take all commodities overall there are 697 commodities, right? And these 697 commodities are divided into three different categories. The category which is having the highest share, that is manufactured products. So this includes 564 products and the weightage is around 64%. So highest weightage is given to the manufactured products. The second highest weightage is given to the primary articles, 117 items. So these primary items, they account for 22% of the total WPI, right? These primary articles include those items which are coming from the primary sector. For example, the agricultural items, mine, minerals, etc. Third category is fuel and power. So this fuel and power has been given approximately 13%. Number of items is 16. Now for examination, you need to just understand that there are 697 items and there are the highest item belongs to the manufactured products and lowest belong to the fuel and power. That is what you are supposed to understand. You don't need to remember the name of all or maybe the number of all the items. In 2017, there were various changes which were brought in the WPI. The first change was the base year was shifted from 4-5 to 2011-12. So right now the base year is 2011-12, and as I told you, this WPI is something related to the industry, and industry operates in which year? Does it operate on the financial year or does it operate on the calendar year? The answer is it operates on the financial year, right? So you will find that this WPI base year is 11-12. This is not, I am not saying 2012, I am saying 2011-12. That means the financial year which starts on 1st of April 2011 and completes on 31st of March 2012, right? This is different from the calendar year. In case of consumer price index, the calendar year is considered, but in case of WPI, the financial year is concerned. And the reason is very simple, because here we are tracking the prices at the factory level, and at the factory level it is the industry, and industry is giving the data to the government based upon which calendar year. which period? Based upon the financial year, not based upon the calendar year. Added a new WPI food index. So this new food index was added, right? So to capture the rate of inflation of the food items, this new WPI food index was added. This food index was useful because in India, this food inflation is very volatile. Even for that matter, in any part of the world, this food tracking is very, very important because this impacts the day-to-day life of the people. You hear the news of the prices of tomato increasing, the prices of onion increasing, and the government is suddenly coming into action because this food item impacts the poor people directly. So to track the information regarding the food inflation and to have a control over the food items, we have taken this new WPI food index separately. Change in the basket of commodities. This basket, as I told you, this representative basket which we take for the weighted average, this was changed and new weights are assigned, and the number of items were also increased from 676 to 697. So now the number of items is 697 and the basket of commodities have been changed. And why? Now you can ask, friends, why this basket of commodities has been changed. The reason is very simple, because in 2004-05, which was the old base year, the items which were in existence were different. So for example, at that point of time, we used to use landline phone, but now we use smartphone. So we have eliminated the landline because that is not representing the mobile industry. Rather, we have included the smartphone, which is representing the telecom industry. Right? So this is the example why we have been changing the basket of commodities from time to time. So again, here why the revamping of WPI has taken. First of all, this WPI is the macroeconomic indicator. Macroeconomic indicator means this is giving a macro perspective to the government, and government is making the policies based upon this macroeconomic indicator. And the base years of the macroeconomic indicators are periodically revised to reflect the better reality. And this also aims to capture the structural changes. As I told you that earlier we used to use the landline phone and now we are using the smartphone. So this is a kind of structural change. It improves the quality, coverage and representativeness. So in a period of maybe 7 to 8 years, a lot of things are changing. The price levels are changing, and therefore we need to update the basket as well as the number of items to make WPI more relevant, to make it more credit worthy. A new food index, as I told you, a new food index was compiled, which is taking the figures from the primary articles and the manufactured products both. So some of the items it has taken from the primary articles and others it has taken from the manufactured products, and together with the CPI food index. So consumer food price index also exists, which is issued by the CSO, right? So this new WPI food index, it is issued by whom? By the Office of Economic Advisor. And this consumer food price index, this is issued by CSO, right? So we are talking here about the WPI food index. Revision of WPI we have seen. So earlier the base year was 2004-05, now it is 11-12. Earlier the number of items were 676, now it is 697. And there is a little bit change in the weightage, but that is not your point to worry. You can ignore that. Now again, June 2019, this WPI is, there are discussions that again the base year might change. So base year, the basket of goods and the price collection methods, all these can be changed, right? Now coming to the consumer price indexes. So as we told you that this old CPI existed till 2011. There were 4 price indexes: CPI IW for the industrial worker, CPI urban non-manual employees, agricultural laborers and rural laborers. After 2011, this has been eliminated, but this and this, they are still going on. So I am not saying that all of them have been eliminated after 2011. What I'm saying is that only one has been eliminated, and now we have these three, and apart from these three, definitely we have the new CPI indices, which include the urban, rural and the combined one. CPI for the industrial worker, first of all. So it clearly indicates that this is for the industrial worker, the people who are working in the industry, right? So this is representing those commodities which are consumed by the industrial workers, right? So this will be tracking the prices of those goods. The base year is 2001. This is very, very old. The discussions are there that this can be changed. Authority. So this industrial worker is something which is related to the labor. They are the labor only, right? So the data regarding the industrial worker consumption is better held by the Labor Bureau, which is coming under the Ministry of Labor. So in case of WPI, the data was with the Office of Economic Advisor, Department of Trade and Internal Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, and under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Here the data is with the Labor Bureau. This thing you have to keep in mind because the questions usually come from such areas. The purpose of this calculation is, so as I already told you, the purpose is not to calculate the inflation but to have some other calculation, that is wage indexation. And for this wage indexation is done for the organized sector as well as for the government. So the wage calculation and wage increase or decrease is happening based upon this index. CPI for industrial worker. Here you can see the weightage. The highest weightage is given to the food. The second highest weightage is given to the housing, right? So these industrial workers, where do they live? They live in the urban areas, right? And housing is a very big cost for them. So you just need to remember that food is the highest cost and second highest is given to the housing. We are not considering this miscellaneous as a second item because it is including multiple items. CPI for industrial worker, this is one kind of notification you can see. So these index numbers have been given for different centers. I'm just showing you the example, but you don't need to remember any of these figures, or maybe you don't need to refer to the slide. Now the previous year question: which of the following brings out the CPI for the industrial worker? This question came in 2015 IAS examination. A. Reserve Bank of India. B. Department of Economic Affairs. C. Labor Bureau. And option D. Department of Personnel and Training. The answer is very, very simple. It is the Labor Bureau, right? So this is the level of question that have been asked. Very, very simple question you can see. So answer is Labor Bureau. Now another CPI index is CPI for the urban non-manual employees. This CPI for the urban non-manual. Non-manual means the people who are working on the technology, right? So this includes the people who are office goers, the people who are working in the offices, the people who don't work in the industries, maybe in the workshop, at the laborers, at the supervisor, foreman. We are not talking about them. And this CPI was discontinued since 2011, and now this is already included in the IW. So at present this CPI urban non-manual employee do not exist. CPI rural labor. RL means rural labor. So this CPI rural labor is existing, and it refers to those commodities which are consumed by the rural laborers, like agricultural laborers, laborers of village and cottage industries. So it is including both the people who are working in the agriculture as well as people who are working in the industries in the rural areas. Who is the authority? Authority is Labor Bureau. Shimla, Ministry of Labor. CPI AL is subset of CPI RL. So in the next slide we will discuss CPI agricultural laborers. So that is all it subset of CPI RL only, and it is used for devising the minimum wages which is given to the agricultural laborers for in different states. This is for the CPI AL, not for the CPI RL. So this CPI RL is used for again revising the minimum wages which is given to agricultural laborers or for the other industries. CPI AL. AL means agricultural laborers. This is given by the authority, Labor Bureau. It is subset of CPI RL only. It is used for revising minimum wages for the agricultural labor in different states, and the base year is 1986-97. Now, the government is also thinking about changing the base years of CPI, AL and RL from 1986-97 to 2019-20 to make it more relevant, to make it more appropriate, right? Apart from that, weightage of food item in the new index, they can be changed. So we are talking about CPI, AL and RL, right? CPI, AL and RL. Weightage of health and education that can be increased, because now the more focus is upon the health and education, and the separate index for all states and UTs will be prepared. This is the summary of the discussion that we did regarding the CPI old indices. So all the CPI old indices I have covered over here. So here you can see base year. So base year for the rural labor is 1983, for agricultural labor is 1983, and for industrial worker is 2001. This is about the consumer expenditure survey. Which consumer expenditure survey was used? So consumer expenditure survey of 1983 and 2001 was used. Base year is 1986, 87 and 2001. How many number of commodities? Don't need to remember. Number of centers you don't need to remember. Time lag you don't need to remember. You just need to remember the frequency is monthly. This is very, very important. All of them are coming on a monthly basis, right? All of them are coming on a monthly basis. This is what you need to remember. This is a graph which is indicating inflation figures of different, segment of population, the price indexes, but this is not important. You can ignore that. New consumer price indices. So why new indices? So old indices, they were only for the working people. They were covering only certain segment of people, that is working people. They were not including non-working people, right? So in 3 new indices were introduced with the base year of 2012, and they include CPI rural, CPI urban and CPI combined. So they will be combining rural and urban index, right? This CPI rural means all the people who are living in that particular rural locality, those people will be considered, and CPI urban means all the population, be it the working population or not working population. So this gives a much more area level as well as state level, right? So we will get the all India figures as well as the state or UT level figures also. These indices are released with the 1 month time lag, and definitely they are monthly only. The weightage is based upon consumer expenditure of urban or rural household, and which is obtained from consumer expenditure survey of 2004-5, which is given by the National Sample Survey of NSSO, right? So the weightage is based upon consumer expenditure survey data. Here you can see the weightage of CPI indices. So highest item in case of rural, it is food and beverages. The second highest we can see is fuel and light. This miscellaneous we are not considering as second largest, because miscellaneous includes a lot number of items. In case of urban, the highest weightage is given to the food and beverage, the second highest to the housing. So in the urban areas, housing cost is very, very high, right? Combinedly, overall highest weightage is given to the food, second highest to the second highest to the fuel and light, and third highest to the housing. You just need to remember that food is having very high weightage in the CPI indices. In the rural, it is having more than 50%. In the urban, it is having approximately 35%. Combinedly, it is having 45%. This is what you are supposed to remember. Here you can see, since the time this CPI came into picture from 2014 onwards. So first time this CPI urban, rural and combined, they came into picture in 2014 with the base year of 2012. So here we can see overall this is the figure for the rural and this is the line for the urban. So the line for the rural area is higher than the line for the urban area. So the prices are rising at much more higher rate in the rural area as compared to the urban area. But what is the reason? The reason is that in the rural areas the government is taking various activities. The government is encouraging the people to join the MG Narega. So the income of the people is increasing and they can buy more goods, right? So money supply in the rural area is increasing. Government is waiving the loan. The government is actually giving more loans through the Kisan credit card. Agricultural credit is being increased. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So various government schemes are coming and people are getting more money. When they have more money, they demand more goods and the inflation is more, right? So this is the reason why the price rise is faster for the rural consumer as compared to the urban consumer from 2014 till 2019. Just like food index is prepared as a WPI level, at the consumer level also, this food price index is also calculated for the rural, urban and combinedly, separately and all India basis from 2014 onwards. So food index is calculated at the wholesale level as well as for the consumer level. And why that? Because this food index is very crucial to control the food inflation and to make the policies regarding that. Overall, you can see all India consumer price indices for rural area, for urban area, for combined, and there are different products. So the product include cereals and products, milk, fruits, vegetables and so on, right? So all those items which you and me we used on a daily basis, those items are part of the all India consumer price index. Now very crucial discussion. What is the difference between the wholesale price index and the CPI? So can you think? I'll give you 2 minutes. Just think about what is the difference, what are the differences between the WPI and CPI. I have already discussed few of them, so just recall them and also think more about that. So I am giving you 2 minutes to think about it. Okay, so coming back, let us discuss each one of them. The full form of WPI is wholesale price index and full form of CPI is consumer price index. Very simple. Meaning, wholesale price index is used to measure the average change in the price of sale of goods in bulk quantity at the wholesaler level. The CPI is used to track the price of goods or services. So here only goods, here both goods and services, very crucial. Wholesale price index is including only goods, consumer price index is including both goods and services. So CPI is much more representative, it is much more better, and it is tracking at the consumer level. CPI, it is published by Office of Economic Advisor under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. CPI is CPI. Okay, so if we talk about CPI old indices and CPI new indices. The CPI old indices, they are published by the Labor Bureau. The new indices, they are published by the CSO, Central Statistics Office, under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So please remember this thing. CPI old, they are issued by the Labor Bureau, and CPI new, they are issued by the CSO under the Ministry of Program and Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. They are restricted to the goods only. CPI is both for goods and services. This is also very, very crucial. It is calculating inflation at the first stage, that is at the X factor level, X minus level, and it is at the final level. So one thing is immediately after the production, and CPI is taken at the consumer level, at the consumption level. WPI, prices bear by manufacturer and the wholesaler, and here the prices which are borne by the consumer. Very, very simple, nothing special. Number of item is 697. Here the number of item for the rural it is 448, and for the urban it is 460. In the urban area, people are consuming more items. WPI, the major categories include manufacturing products, fuel and power, and primary articles. CPI, it includes education, food, transport, communication, recreation, etc. So those items which are used for the purpose of consumption. Base year, it is financial year, and which is the financial year? 2011-12. In case of CPI, it is the calendar year. Yeah, it is the calendar year, that is 2012, and we are talking about the new one. WPI, it is used by few countries, and CPI is much more wider, it is much more prevalent. That is why India now is using CPI as the nominal anchor for tracking the inflation as part of the inflation targeting mechanism. Now, what is the periodicity of release? WPI, it is released on weekly basis for primary articles, fuel and power, and for rest of the item it is calculated on monthly basis. I am repeating this. So WPI for primary articles, fuel and power on weekly basis, and for rest of the items, that is manufactured items, it is calculated on monthly basis, right? So this is very, very crucial. CPI, it is always released on monthly basis. This difference you have to keep in mind. I have summarized all these differences in these two slides. So meaning we are very much clear. Wholesale level, retail level, published by Office of Economic Advisor, CSO, or maybe Labor Bureau also in case of old ones. It includes goods only, it includes goods and services both. It is first and subsequent transaction, it is final transaction. Manufacturer and wholesalers, consumer level 697 items, 448 and 460 items. The type of goods which include are manufacturing inputs and intermediate goods. Here those items which are consumed. Base year is 11-12, which is a financial year. Here the base year is 2012, which is a calendar year. Weightage for food items, this is less, which is very, very important, and here the weightage for the food items is more. Data release weekly and monthly both, only on monthly basis. So these are the different basis upon which we can differentiate WPI and CPI. Now let us see one previous year question. With reference to India, consider the following statements. This question appeared in 2010 IAS Prelims examination. Wholesale price index in India is available on a monthly basis only. Is it true or wrong? We have already seen that wholesale price index in India is available both on weekly and monthly. For few items this is for weekly, and for others it is on monthly. So this statement is wrong. Statement 2, as compared to consumer price index for industrial workers, the WPI gives less weight to the food articles. Yes, this is true, we have just discussed. So which of the statement given above is or are correct? The answer is B, or 2 only. Very, very simple question. So answer is 2 only. Now, so we have discussed wholesale price index, we have discussed consumer price index. Now we will discuss producer price index, PPI. So friends, we have seen certain calculations at the wholesale level, we have seen at the consumer level. But what about the prices of inputs which are taken by the production house? And what about the prices of output which are received by the production house or a producer? So for tracking these input prices and for tracking these output prices, we calculate producer price index. This producer price index is not calculated formally at present in India, but it is being considered seriously to replace the WPI, because there are certain lacunas in the WPI, right? So let us see a couple of more things about the producer price index. So producer price index, it tracks the price changes from the perspective of producers, whereas CPI, it tries from the consumers or buyers perspective. So here the perspective is the perspective of producer. It measures the average change in the prices of goods and services. So both goods and services, very crucial, which how it is different from WPI. So some of you might say, sir, in the previous slide you are saying output of producer, that is equal to WPI only. No, that is not equal to WPI, because in the WPI only and only goods are included, but in PPI they are including both goods and services. This is very crucial. So it measures the average change in the prices of goods and services either as they leave the place of production, that is at the output level, which is called output PPI, or as they enter the production process, which is called input PPI at the input level. Thus the output indices measures the average change in the prices that producers receive, right? That is at the output level, output indices, and the prices that they pay for their inputs, that is at the input level. So when there is a producer, for example, we take the example of maybe Tata Steel. So when Tata Steel is receiving the ore, iron ore, right, that the prices of that iron ore will be calculated and will be traced from time to time based upon the price index and the inflation rate of inflation, and those prices will be tracked. And when the final steel is being produced and it is being sold, that steel will also be considered. Similarly for the service sector also. So WPI is taken only for the goods, but this PPI is also taken for the service sector. So PPI, it excludes the effect of indirect taxes. This is very crucial, because indirect taxes are not included in the production cost. Wholesale price index basket tracks the prices of bulk at the first stage and all the intermediate and final goods. So if we compare the WPI and PPI, another difference is that the WPI is tracking both the final goods and the intermediate goods. That means there are chances of double counting. There is chances of duplication. So WPI do not indicate the correct picture. For example, if we take this mouse, so this mouse is the final product. So WPI will consider the final price of this mouse also, and in this mouse some plastic has also been used. So WPI will also consider the prices of the plastic also. So it is actually duplicating. In case of PPI, only and only final goods will be considered wherever the final product is available, and if the final product is not there, then intermediate one will be taken. The point is that the single counting will be ensured, and for that supply use table will be referred to, right? We will see what is supply use table. So I think now this point is very clear. The wholesale price index basket tracks the prices of bulk transactions at first stage of all intermediate and final goods. It excludes the effect of indirect taxes. It takes into account both the goods and services. Producer price index, this concept came into discussion in 2014 when Professor B.N. Golder committee, it actually started examining the concept of PPI in India, and it indicated certain prime objectives. First, to do away with the bias of double counting. As I told you, in the WPI we include both the intermediate and the final, but in case of PPI we include either final or intermediate, but we do not include twice. It includes services at the production as well, and it is consistent with the national account statistics for use as the deflator. B.N. Golder committee, which was constituted in 2014, it gives its recommendations in 2017, and it said that we should start the shift of WPI to PPI on experimental basis. So we should bring a pilot project. The data can be taken from supply use table of CSO, because this supply use table is actually identifying the specific items, whether they are final use or for the intermediate use. So that will avoid the duplication of counting. The base year will be kept as 2011-12, just like the WPI. To include the services price in the PPI basket, that is already very clear. The service will also be becoming part of this. It will also include the major export and import items, so that it can actually give the GDP deflator picture. It can be used as a GDP deflator. What is the meaning of GDP deflator? We will discuss in the subsequent slide. So producer price index, a lot of advanced countries have already switched to the PPI, and IMF has also recommended. So advanced economies as well as IMF, all of them are recommending to switch to the PPI, and therefore India is actually very serious. But there are various challenges. The challenges include, first of all, how to bring about the service sector database. Service sector database is very difficult to collect. Then government has to also take care of certain government services like railway, postal, banking and telecom. So data for them has to be collected. Agricultural data, that has to be collected. Historical data. So agricultural data for which we take the prices from the mandi. Now that data we need to take from the producer, which is very challenging, because the farmers cannot easily give the data. So this is very challenging. Historical data is also very challenging. So these are the issues because of which we are actually not able to implement the PPI on an immediate basis. But definitely Ramesh Chandra committee has been constituted, and this panel is actually considering to switch from WPI to PPI, right? And this committee is having 4 officials from the National Statistics Office, 2 from the Finance Ministry, and from other areas. You don't need to remember the number of members from different areas. You just need to remember that this is the Ramesh Chandra committee, and this was formed in June 2019. This is considering. So earlier it was B.N. Golder committee, now it is Ramesh Chandra committee. You just need to remember that this is the Ramesh Chandra committee. There are various related terms, right? So these related terms, which include stagflation, deflation, inflation, deflation, GDP deflator, base effect, inflation targeting, we will discuss in the next lecture, right? So in this lecture we completed wholesale price index, consumer price index and producer price index. I will suggest that revise this video immediately by increasing the speed to twice, so that your time taken is half and you can actually rewind the entire discussion very fast, right? So with this I complete this lecture. Thank you very much.